Joining me live is a Deputy Opposition Leader and Shadow Treasurer, Ted O'Brien. Ted, you would have seen the revelations, the allegations, as we have seen, $1,000 for a card to wait for her while she went to the tennis. But is anything in this a sackable offence? What is the worst of it?
I think it's the accumulation of the whole lot is the worst of it, to be honest, Laura. And whether or not she loses her job, that's a matter for the Prime Minister. Certainly the Parliamentary Expenses Authority should have all of her expenses reviewed. It should be referred to them. For me, it just goes to a complete lack of judgment, firstly on her part, but secondly on the part of the Prime Minister for defending it.
But what would they review? Because what we've seen is in the rules. So what would the department actually review here?
Well, what's been reported by the media seems to be within the rules, even though it doesn't pass the pub test. I think what the authority could do is ensure all expenses have been within the rules, and let's have an independent authority look at this. But to date, it doesn't sound good. I don't think just the average Australian, especially those who are struggling ahead of Christmas, would cop this. And I think that's the real issue here.
But if the PBO does find that everything was in the rules, what should happen to her?
Well, again, it's a complete lack of judgment, and that's what she needs to be called out for. As for the Prime Minister, he'll have to make his decision whether or not she keeps the job. That's for him to decide. But to date, it looks as though he thinks it's all wonderful, wonderful stuff. Nothing to see here. Yeah. For me, looking after the Treasury portfolio, it's just another example of the government overspending, just treating taxpayers' money as if it's anything to be played with.
Ted, how confident are you that you, yourself and everyone on your team has always played not only by the rules, but the spirit of them too?
Oh, look, I am confident. And, once, Laura, you go and ask the Parliamentary Expenses Body their advice, they always finish their advice about whether it's in the rules or not by making it very clear it's up to individual parliamentarians to use their own judgment. And really that's code for if you think this passes the pub test, well, that's fine. But it's up to the individual, to be honest. You can't have everything prescribed down to the last letter. That would just be nigh impossible. So it's up to each individual parliamentarian to not just follow the rules, but to use their own judgment as to what is reasonable when it comes to things like family reunions and travel of family members in particular.
Okay, so 2022, you're on a listening tour of Newcastle. You bill the taxpayers for a family reunion. Does that pass the pub test?
Yeah, I believe it does. I think by memory, probably in my 9 years in office, that might be, one of the few that I use to ensure that we can have a family reunion there, doing work in that area. And so my family was able to actually join with me. I don't think people criticise reunions per se. Again, it's just whether it passes the pub test, whether it's reasonable. And certainly for that, absolutely defend it. I think probably the last family reunion I had, I don't know how long ago that was, may have been a couple of years ago or more. That was the family coming down to Canberra while I was doing work there. I don't think people in the pubs, if you like, if we're talking pub tests, I don't think they complain about parliamentarians having family members with them. The issue is whether or not you are spending taxpayer money effectively, fairly, especially as people are heading towards Christmas amidst a cost of living crisis. Can you justify the expenses?
Okay, so in 2002 on that same trip, you claimed $868 in family allowance travel to fly one member of your family to Newcastle and back to Brisbane on those dates. Is that cost effective for domestic flights?
I'm sure it would have been, because all these things are checked by me in my office judiciously. And so, again, if family reunions can be done effectively, cheaply, and for the purpose they're intended, then there should be no problem with that. The question we have to ask as parliamentarians is whether or not you can justify that, whether or not it passes the pub test, Certainly, that trip, you're going back 3 years ago now. Yes, at that time doing a lot of work, especially in that area, in the energy portfolio, you might recall, Laura. And so where you can have family join you, that's fine. The question is whether or not it passes the pub test.
What is the pub test, though?
If you're going,
what are the rules within the pub test?
I think,
is it a level of arrogance?
Well,
is it that you use it sparingly? Is it that you get away with it and the media doesn't report on it? I mean, it's pretty ephemeral.
I think it's probably those first two, not the latter. I don't think it's a matter of getting away with things. I mean, that's sort of media are there for a reason, and it's sort of like the questions you asked me. Totally fair enough. That's what you expect, and when you use these sort of entitlements, you've got to be completely aware. You might be asked questions. I think it's the first two things. Is it reasonable? If you're sitting around having a chat to people and someone says, "Did you know that politician actually this happened? That they used this money?" That people would go, "You know what? That's fair enough." If you look at the expenses undertaken by the minister, I don't believe that passes the pub test. I don't believe the average Australian is saying, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, that was probably that was fair enough. Hadn't seen a family for a long time. That they got together." It doesn't pass that test. Nobody is suggesting it does, other than the Prime Minister, a few other ministers, and the minister herself.
Okay, I want to talk about the energy rebates that have been scrapped. It's $7 billion, these energy rebates. Was it the right decision from Jim Chalmers not to extend it beyond this year?
Well, we always support helping families when they're in trouble, Laura. I think that it's clear from here the government has run out of money. And hopefully now that these rebates come off, they can start dealing with the real problem at hand, which is energy prices keep soaring. My concern has been you've had, $6.8 billion of taxpayers' money being used to effectively paper over a failed energy policy. So unfortunately, Australians are now going to cop the full brunt of Labor's energy policy, the consequences. Now, hopefully, that will spur the government into action to change that policy. To date, the issue with the subsidies has been the government's just been dealing with the symptom of the problem, and therefore it's allowed sort of complacency to sink in. It's not dealing with the source of the problem. And the source of the problem is Labor's failed energy policy. That has to be the priority.
But just to be clear, you think it was a good decision not to extend it beyond this year? You wouldn't be promising to reinstate it or anything like that if you won the next election?
Oh, we're talking about 2.5 years away, Laura. So
but a good decision from Jim Chalmers?
The coalition's position. Well, he had no choice because he's run out of money. I mean, debt's going to hit $1 trillion. $1 trillion within months. Taxpayers are paying more than they've ever paid. I mean, since Jim Chalmers actually took over the Treasury bench, taxpayers are now paying, on average, an extra $5,000 in personal income taxes. An extra $5,000. So he keeps taxing people more. Debt goes up. They're running out of money. And I believe the coalition's been doing the right thing by calling the government out to, one, stop the spending spree, and two, start growing the economic pie. Until they do that, then unfortunately we are going to see a stagnating economy.
Ted, great to see you. Thanks for joining AM Agenda. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Laura. All the best.